Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of War and Conquest. This is your host, as always, Neil Eckert, and today is our show update, source review slash voting for the next series episode. So to start off with, and before I get too far, this will be on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, probably should. I'm recording this on Zoom. I'll edit it later for audio, but the video will be the same. And so you guys can see the beautiful, they say beautiful, beautiful covers of some of these books. But we'll get to that last because that's the most boring part of the episode. And I know so many people have short extension spans. So, firstly, show updates. I'm sure a lot of you have been asking, where has Neil been? This started off as a weekly show and then it became twice a month, and now we're lucky to get an episode every 3 weeks. Well, dear viewer, the answer is numerous, multifaceted, complex, like I try to make every one of the episodes. So first off, it's just, general, laziness taking over. This is something I struggle with on a daily basis. I struggle to overcome it just enough to do work and some of my hobbies, and then everything else sort of falls by the wayside. If you think I'm joking, take a look at my kitchen. It's a disaster. I cook, I eat dinner, and then I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like cleaning because I've used up all my ambition for the day. And on top of that, we've had some recent upheavals in my life. My last ex-girlfriend, who I thought, maybe we had a chance to make it, just up and left me one day, broke my heart. And then a week later, my grandmother got admitted to the hospital and they found out she has stage 4 colon cancer. And I'm actually surprised she's still alive. Like they had to do some emergency surgery to take like a bunch of fluid and infectious material out of her intestines, or it was going to kill her within days, they said. And even though she did survive the surgery, she is in recovery, thankfully. She still has stage 4 cancer. So it's not looking good for her, nor for my grandfather. He has very advanced dementia. He's like 10-second Tom from the movie 51st Dates. You have the same like 3 or 4 conversations with him over and over again. It it's tough to really spend time with either one of them or to really even think about it. I mean, these people help raise me. I mean, both my parents are in the picture, but my mom taught at Florence Township schools, and my grandparents live in Florence. My mom would just drop me off in the morning and then go to work for the first, I don't know, let's see, when was the end of 5th grade? Um, so I was like 9 or 10. So like from birth to 10 years old, like I spent 6 days a week with these people. So they're like a second set of parents to me. It's tough to see them go through it, but that's just part of life. Everything that's born will eventually decay and die. But it still leaves some emotional trauma. I've sort of come to terms with it, but I've just been trying to distract myself at this point from, pretty much everything. And one of the things I found to do that is playing softball. I've been playing softball like 5 to 7 nights a week. I'm on 6 different teams. Actually, I was on 7, but I got thrown off of one because apparently I'm too mean to people. I don't personally don't think that was the case. I think they were being a little bit oversensitive, but what are you going to do? I'm still on 6 teams. I'm playing 5 to 7 nights a week because when I'm out there on that field, I don't have to think about everything that's going wrong in my life. I don't have to think about my grandparents dying or the fact that I don't have anybody that loves me anymore or the fact that I'm falling behind on the show, which I love. And I hate myself for that. So, to quote Crash Davis from Bull Durham, we're dealing with a lot of shit right now. But the show must go on, so here we are. This is an easy enough episode for me to do. And I am working diligently on future content, both for this show and the Patreon community, which, if you're not a part of, maybe consider joining. There's plenty of extra episodes at this point you can scroll back through the back catalog and listen to. It's once a month. I try to do it once a month. We do a viewer voted on topic. Sometimes it's just a random thing that comes to mind that people want to know about. Sometimes it's something that's sort of related to what we're discussing on the main show, but didn't have enough time to get to, or it got cut on the editing room floor. And like for instance, right now, like while we're doing this series on the Normans in northern France and England, on the Patreon, we're going to be doing a multi-part series on the Normans in Sicily, who have an equally fascinating story to their northern counterparts, which I will be releasing, God willing, soon. I have most of the details, just putting the finishing touches on it, and then just finding a time to record. So maybe Friday what is that? Oh, the 9th. It's tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Or if I don't get this out on time, maybe it'll already be out by the time you listen to it. Either way, working hard on it, trying to find the time and the ambition to record. Now, for the moment some of you have been waiting for a while now, the voting options for next series. And honestly, I think I really only need to do one, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure option A is going to win the polls, but just in case, we're going to break out the whiteboard. Off the Rails fans know about the whiteboard. It's usually for funny sayings, but today we're going to be doing the voting options. So, and this is, if you're unsure how to get a chance to vote, you either become a past or present patron. Past patrons are eligible to vote on the thing. I'll put it on the page. I'll put it as public access. If you've donated the money to the show before, then you get a vote. And I will be emailing everyone that I'm aware of that donated outside of Patreon. So, in the A column, we have the Mongols. People have been bugging me since the beginning of this show to cover the Mongols. I personally didn't really want to cover it because it's Asian history, and I felt like I couldn't do better than Dan Carlin's Wrath of the Khans. But, I'm opening my horizons, and I think I'm at the point now where I can do just as good, if not better, of a job at doing this story than he did. So, option A, the Mongols. We're going to go from Genghis Khan up until at least Kublai. I just recently purchased Marco Polo's Adventures on Audible. Fantastic book, ignited my interest in the subject again, and we might be doing that. Like I said, I'm pretty sure A is going to win, but just in case, option B, we have Justinian. And Belisarius, because that they're a two-man. I think that's how you spell it. I don't know. I'm sure if we do that, I'll figure out how to spell Belisarius' name. They were a runner-up in a couple other voting polls. I want to give them another shot, but like I said, don't think they stand a chance against the Mongols. Option C, we are going to have the rise of the Caliphate. Something that always gets a few votes. Honestly, not as many as I thought it would. Not as many people are interested in that story, but I do find it fascinating. So there's a chance we could do it. So Rise of the Caliphate is option C. That's how you spell Caliphate. There we go. And option D, we're going to do the Mamluks. Another distant second or third in past voting options, but maybe one day we'll get to it. We've got things spread out a little bit. We've got Middle Ages to late Middle Ages. We have early Byzantine era, kind of Dark Ages, another kind of Dark Ages one, and late Middle Ages. So those are the options. I will be deploying the easel here for the YouTube viewers to see them, help you ruminate on them in case you weren't paying attention earlier. If not, well, I guess you always could just use the back button to see. So the whiteboard is now deployed with the options. And we can move into sources. All right, to start off, we're going to use the textbooks here. We've got Alfred the Great, Asser's Life of King Alfred and Other Contemporary Sources from Penguin Classics. Penguin Classics, great for historical studies. They have a lot of older contemporary historical accounts. They have, I have quite a few books on my shelf from Penguin. They're generally pretty good with annotations. Sometimes they put them in the back, which is annoying. I always prefer books that put them on the page they occur on, but, I can't nitpick too much. This was great up until the death of Alfred. Fascinating sort of first-person account of the reign of Alfred the Great, and a great primary source. So, Alfred the Great and other works. Next on the pile, we've got Oxford Illustrated History of the Vikings by Peter Sawyer. It's pretty nice. It's got some nice illustrations in it. Not super in-depth, but if you're looking for some more pictures and some more insight into the Viking world, not a bad book. Then we have the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Love-hate relationship with this. Once again, it's one of the few primary sources we have of this period, but as I've gone on at length about, kind of vague on the details. One benefit is, though, you can get this story all the way up until, let's see, the 12th century. Very early parts of the 12th century is when the Normans finally stopped the production of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So you can get pretty much the entire story of the Anglo-Saxons in this book. And it's a primary source, so if you're into that, there it is. Next, we have Athelstan by Sarah Foote. It's a strange last name. This one is about, well, Athelstan. A little more specific of a book. The other ones were sort of general histories. This one is very specific. It starts in the early days of England, sort of skims through some things. It's split into multiple different chapters, so you can get on like a different perspective on Athelstan. Like, table of contents, family, court, church, kingdom, war, death, British monarchy, epilogue. So if you're looking for more information on Athelstan and the circumstances surrounding his rule, there you go. Athelstan by Sarah Foote. Next, The White Horse King, The Life of Alfred the Great by Benjamin Merkel. Honestly, didn't really read this one. I bought it and it kind of sat on my bookshelf because I knew that I was going to have to get it later in the story because, starting early Anglo-Saxon period, that's 300 years before Alfred the Great, and kind of forgot about it until I was pretty much done writing the Alfred episode. So honestly, couldn't tell you. It could be a great book, might be terrible. Who really knows? On to the next one. We have The Warrior Queen, The Life and Legend of Athelflaed, daughter of Alfred the Great, by Joanna Arman. A celebration of female leadership, says the History of Royals, according to the cover. And yeah, that's what it is. It sort of covers some of the details of Alfred's life going through. Oh, apparently this was owned by a Michael A. Ethang. I can't really read the last part of it. But Michael, if that's vaguely, if you're Michael and you had this book in August 23rd of 2020, I have your book. I bought it on Amazon. So if you can sort of decipher the code that was your last name and you're somehow listening, that would be an incredibly impressive coincidence. Actually, you know what? Just for posterity's sake, let's attempt this last name one more time. Eathaghe, Athaghe. So Mike, if you're out there, I've got your book. And in case you're wondering how good was the book, it's pretty good. It sort of details in the beginning the life of King Alfred, and then it gets into Ethelflaed. Only issue with this is a book like this is it's a pretty narrow scope of events because Ethelflaed doesn't have, I think she dies in what, it's like 918 or something like that. So it's really only a scope of like 30 years or so this book covers. But if you want to know more about girl bosses in history, then The Warrior Queen is a celebration of female leadership, according to the History of the Royals. Then we have a couple general histories here. We have The Anglo-Saxon World by Nicholas J. Higham and Martin J. Ryan. According to Michael Wood, author of In Search of the Dark Ages, you could hardly have a better, more timely, and more attractive demonstration of why the Anglo-Saxons still matter to us. Well, that was nice of you to say, Michael Wood. And I have to agree with this. I mean, this is another book. It's got a ton of pictures, archaeological surveys, maps. Ooh, look at that. I found a ticket in here. What does this say? Sorry to miss you while you were out. Oh, this was a UPS delivery thing from earlier. But yeah, it's got everything. It's got maps. It's got pictures. It's got archaeological finds. As I said, it covers pretty much everything. I mean, we get. Let's see how far it goes. Pretty sure it goes to the conquest. That would make sense. Yeah, I was talking about the Bayeux Tapestry, so it goes up to the conquest, which is pretty much what you would expect from a general history of the Anglo-Saxons. And this sucker's got like 450 pages. This is a pretty meaty book. This is something you could like hit somebody with and really do some damage. So if that's your thing when you buy books, this sucker's pretty weighty. Somewhat less weighty, but no less valuable, is The Anglo-Saxons by, oh, it's edited by James Campbell. Well, who wrote it? James Campbell. Who's Eric John? Maybe that's who wrote the book originally. And Patrick Wormold. And oh, yes, it was written by James Campbell and edited by him. That seems a little self-serving, don't you think? Nonetheless, still, I don't know why I can't talk today. Like every time I try to do like a saying, I end up screwing it up. I don't know what that's about, to be honest with you. This is more the same. This has a little bit more detail into some of the events. Less pictures, or I guess it's fewer pictures is technically correct. And they're all in black and white. You know, the Anglo-Saxon world had color pictures. So, if that's a deal breaker for you, you might want to go with the other one. But this one's got a pretty good narrative of the story, as well as aerial photographs, archaeology stuff, maps, pretty much everything you would expect from a general history book. This one's, let's see how many pages this is. It's like 250, so it's 200 pages less than the Anglo-Saxon world. But the story's a little bit better. And now we move on to the Audible sources. So first off, we have A Brief History of the Anglo-Saxons by Geoffrey Hindley. Fantastic audiobook. The narrator's pretty good. Gives you a good general overview of the story. Let's see how long this thing is. Title details. Here we go. It's 13 hours. So pretty significant audiobook. You got plenty to learn. I definitely used this a lot when I was working and didn't have time to read. Another person who has another book like this is Mark Morris. He has a book called The Anglo-Saxons, and it is 13 hours. It's narrated by Roy McMillan. He's got a nice audiobook voice. These two would sort of go back and forth. I think that Mark Morris's book is a little bit more readable. So if you're looking for more readability, I would go with Morris's book, The Anglo-Saxons, over A Brief History of the Anglo-Saxons. But, they're both equally as good. So if you get 2 credits you're looking to burn, just buy both of them. Fuck it. I Am Legend. No, well, that wasn't a source. That was just something I was reading while I was doing the show. Actually, just a little slight book recommendation. I recommend I Am Legend. It's a pretty great book. Definitely better than the movie. There's Viking Heart by Arthur Herman. Arthur Herman. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. That's 18 hours, really? Honestly, didn't finish it. Didn't like it that much. He says Viking Heart, like the phrase, entirely way too many times in the time that I read it. So, yeah, that's not for me. But if you're one of those people that thinks you have a Viking heart, then, maybe. The Norman Conquest. No. We're skipping ahead. I'm sorry. I've been listening to a lot of stuff on Audible here. I'm trying to find the one we used. I've got Ragnar Lothbrok and A History of the Vikings by Noah Brown, only from Audible, supposedly. That one's pretty good. That gives a pretty general history of his Vikings in general. It talks a little bit about Ragnar Lodbrok, and that talks about the Vikings in Iceland and other parts of Scandinavia, Russia, the Varangian Guard, Ireland, England, Norman Conquest kind of stuff. So it gives you a pretty good idea of what the Vikings were doing throughout this time period, but at least in the areas that I've read in the book, it's not super specific, and the narrator is kind of shitty, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of him. Moving on, we have The Forge of Christendom. This has showed up on several of our early medieval shows before, simply because it's a book that covers a bunch of different European countries in the run up to the millennium. Tom Holland's a great author. He still doesn't respond to my emails asking to him to come on the show, so I'm still a little bit bitter about that. But nonetheless, the man knows how to write a good book, and the narrator for this book is absolutely astounding. If you listen to last week's episode on Off the Rails, you kind of know how, actually, you don't kind of know, you literally know how the book ends because we played the last like 2 minutes of it on the show. So if you haven't listened to the last episode, what are you doing listening to this one, you little out of order listener? But, I find the book very entertaining. I've never actually read it before. I've only ever had it on Audible, although I did buy it for my dad for a Christmas present. He said it was okay, but he doesn't know what's good for him. There's Children of Ash and Elm by Neil Price. I'm not just going to recommend this one because the guy has the same first name as me, but it's a good book. This guy sort of covers Viking culture as a whole throughout Europe throughout this period, but he does it better than the other ones. I think this is probably the best book on the Vikings that I've found so far, at least in my personal opinion. And I believe that's it. Let me just scroll through my Audible collection here, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, there's Never Greater Slaughter, too, by Michael Livingston, which talks about the battle of, Brunanburh. He tries to find it. He approaches this battle from every aspect. He gives you the build up to the battle, the aftermath, as many competing theories about what actually happened in the battle. Fantastic book. It's a little bit limited in its scope because he's focusing pretty much solely on Brunanburh and the immediate lead up to and repercussions of. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, this is the best book I found discussing just that. And that looks like it. Scrolling through, yeah, I'm getting back into the other. Oh, I have The Age of Vikings too by Anders Winroth. Be honest with you, I forgot I had this in my collection. I guess that means it wasn't that memorable the parts I listened to it. Or I just simply forgot about it as I watched it drop farther and farther in the rankings as I listened to other books. Like I said, to be honest, I didn't finish a lot of these books that I recommended here simply because I was cherry picking information I needed just for the Anglo-Saxon and Viking wars. Most of these books talk about, at least they talk about Vikings, talk about them in the whole, their activities throughout Europe. So if that's something you're interested in, buy some or all of these books. I don't care. I'm just saying, I didn't read a lot of them fully because a lot of the information wasn't necessary. And I was trying to jam as much useful information in my mind as I could and try to just sort of skip over the chapters that weren't really relevant. Although I will say I'm glad we finally got to do something on Iceland for the Patreon community, because the amount of times I've heard the story of Iceland as I'm waiting to get to other parts of the book about the Viking era that I'm interested in is astronomical. Like, I know the story of the foundation of Iceland better than I know the story of the Anglo-Saxons, simply by having to listen to it on a bunch of different audiobooks. But that concludes today's episode. I hope you guys stuck around to the end, or at least got the important bits of the show updates and voting polls. So once again, in case you forgot, if you're not watching the thing on YouTube and you're just listening, we have option A, Mongols, B, Justinian and Belisarius, C, Rise of the Caliphate, D, the Mamluks. Those are our options. The poll will be up on Patreon soon. I hope to see as many people as eligible show up, and I hope it's another neck and neck race like it always is. The past like 3 or 4 voting options have been really close, and I always like the tension of not knowing what's going to win. So with that, I hope you guys have a great week, or weeks, or months, until I'm back again, and I will catch you on the next one.